All right, welcome. Just to check briefly, Naima and Picara, can you hear me okay? You can just put it in the chat just to make sure that we have audio well. Perfect. Great.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
And Naima, just to check in, because I know you've been using some of this for a little bit and would love your perspective. Are you able to be here for like the next 20 minutes? Naima?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can be here.
Okay, perfect. So then I'll do a short intro and then I'll let you go in. So today we want to bring in a topic that it's part of the kind of ethos of Thrive Beyond, which is to always bring the center of inner knowing, intuition, this ancestral wisdom that the body, mind, soul have, and combined with modern technology to not feel like it's a trade-off, one or the other. And in the last few years, we'll share some examples now, we've had more devices that try to measure things. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples, and we may have a video to share later, but I spent quite a bit of time over the last 2 years. First with the Apple Watch, then with the Oura Ring on sleep, then with the Whoop, both with DAX, practicing different protocols of breath work, eyes, exercise, and with Andres in his gym. And I'll share a little bit his very beautiful perspective on bringing this. So the first is I'm going to share 3 things, and then we'll be pretty interactive, and then I'll explain some technical parts. The first is that Andres and Dax, always when they bring someone to personal training, the first session is always about purpose. What brings you in? Like, why would you like to have more muscle or lose some body fat? And I really like the way they do it because they do it in a very subtle and deep way, and they really ask people their emotional needs and desires, their mind. Some people want to be more clear to start a new business, or to become better artists or dancers, or to be better parents. But they also always include the deeper intuition, as deep as people want to go in their spiritual path too. And they explain how important it is, for example, to measure and build things like muscle mass, not just to look stronger aesthetically, but to allow you to have better proprioception, better metabolic health, better strength, flexibility, and tuning to your body. So today I want to speak about three devices, and I'll let some people share some stories. But I will share a couple of examples of how to avoid, I think, the biggest mistakes first, which is the last thing you want to do is put on a device and then start to go on automatic. We were discussing how important a beginner mindset and a growth mindset is. And some people think, okay, now I have a watch, it measures my steps, and like now I just count the steps per day. And the whole essence of why do you choose to walk? When do you do it? When do you need rest? Like, what is the kind of strain that you want? We used to have not as much detail. Yati can share in a bit how an early investment in measuring helped him. But I want to focus a lot in the next frontier, which is, let's say that you already have gone deeply into a sensing of how you want a kind of longevity, health span, and vitality into the future. And you start to understand that maybe monitoring the quality of sleep, like the Oura Ring, is helpful. And then you realize that knowing your heart rate, body temperature, heart rate variability, several other things that can be measured, give you a better, like a better tuning, not just to how many hours you slept, but to understanding better how you're recovering, how eating late at night could have an impact, how you've been going between light sleep, REM, and deep sleep. And then I think a device like the Aura, most of these you wear them all the time, give you very beautiful insights over time. But the invitation is to always do it first with a purpose. Second, using your own intuition first, and then this as an aid. And then at its best, learning in community, because then you have a lot more data to show. I did a lot of working with my Whoop, and I would share with Yati and with Dax, like, okay, I'm trying different protocols of breath work, of different kind of times in ice, this, and how to do different meditation techniques where I would go much deeper and see if my heart rate variability actually became a much more the kind of indicator for the mindset I was looking for. I had already experienced a lot what the mindset felt like after ice. So I wasn't expecting the Whoop to give me the data. It was much more like a dialogue. So I'm going to give you two examples and then I'll pass to Naima. Andres, who has worked in the physical training field for all this time, when he got his Whoop, he started doing some very difficult dual training, which was preparing for running in a competitive level while still working on a very high level, high weight, hypertrophy muscles. It's very hard to do both trainings well with traditional measurements because you need to get many details very perfect about nutrition, about rest, about the level of strain, about cardiovascular zones of training. You know, what do you do in zone 2? What do you do in high interval? So he had a great ally to what he already had trained on his own. But then he got a setback, a very bad flu in the stomach. He's not a very healthy person, had him out for like 2 weeks. And then he saw his mind almost playing a trick on him. You know, like being like, okay, I need to go back to training hard because I need to get back to be ready for competition, for the strength, and to also get the Whoop to see all the scores of like calories burned, heart rate. But he says he first tuned with his own awareness. And his body said, no, like you need a few more days of rest. Like you're no longer sick. So he kept eating well. He kept doing all the other basics. Then about 4 days later, he came back to training with the Whoop. And then within 3 days, he saw incredible recovery. So this is exactly how we would like people to start seeing it. An ally, where you first listen to your body and intuition, but then you're able to see that when you follow well your inner wisdom and your training. And then he explained how he has been using it for some of his clients. So one of his clients travels a lot, like it used to happen to me, but he has the Whoop, and so they have the training program. So while he's traveling, they're able to share some of the data. So he'll be able to tell him, oh, you know, like I see you're not resting as well, probably eating late. Do some more of this exercise in the morning so you can at least keep some of the fitness well. And then when he comes back to the gym, he is able to feel like he's almost had a sense of what this person was going through during that intense business trip, and not just like out of view, out of mind. Like when he's not at the gym, you just don't even know what's happening. And then in the gym now, there's a group which I'm a part of. So we're able to do experiments where we can share with data what we're doing in our own. For example, I've been trying a different breath work to pre-oxygenate the body and alkalinize before certain kind of strengths. I have been working to use ice before exercise because it's often used after, and see how it does in strength. And then it has the extra gift to learning community. But before going to some of the technical parts, I wanted to first open it up briefly. Naima, do you want to share a little bit what motivated you to get the Whoop? What were some of the things that for you have been working? What is kind of like the next frontier you would like to bring into a device like this?
Oh yeah, thanks for the intro. I think motivation has been, well, both my partner Juan and I have been geeking out a lot on longevity, and this, as you say, feels like an ally, a buddy to support us in that path. And actually Juan is like very geeky about tech stuff, so he's like wanting to be on the cutting edge of a lot of these things. Brian Johnson, I don't know if you guys are oh, you guys can hear me?
Yes. Yes, we know
Uh,
Brian Johnson. Yeah.
I think he was the first one that that we heard about the Whoop from. And the main thing, to be honest, I don't think I'm really optimizing it to the max. What has been very helpful is sleep. So I haven't tried anything else like Aura Ring that you have, but yeah, starting to be more aware of sleep. And I didn't know, you know, like I was waking up sometimes during the night, or REM, or all these things. So keeping track of that, and then observing what are the factors that affect my sleep. So for example, we didn't know that alcohol, I barely drink alcohol, but you know, alcohol can really affect your rest and your sleep. So since then I've like completely stopped drinking alcohol, for instance. Or like checking, okay, if I exercised hard during the day, did I sleep better? So, and then like consistency, you know, we listened to the lead scientist, data scientist at Whoop. I forget her name, but it's a fantastic interview with the guy who does Diary of a CEO. If you guys haven't heard it, maybe I can share it in the group.
Yeah,
But
do share in the group. I'm gonna ask that question tomorrow, and it is perfect.
yeah, it's a fascinating conversation with her. And she says, in her opinion, the most important thing that they've learned from all the Whoop data of thousands and thousands of people is sleep consistency. Going to bed at similar time, waking up at a similar time, and there's like a gap of like a leeway of like 30 minutes, and then, you know, on the weekend maybe 1 hour max. But if you go outside that range, it can really start to affect all your like your HRV, things like that. So that's been helpful to get into a more consistent pattern, and then seeing the sleep score, things like that. So to be honest, like HRV for me is still like a mystery. You know, my average is like around the high 30s, and I thought like for somebody my age I should be in like the 60s, and I'm like, I think I'm pretty healthy. So I really don't understand what affects it and what can improve it. So I would be really curious to learn from others if anyone's been able to increase their heart rate variability, since I've understood that that's one of the key variables to that like reflect your health, your overall health. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there. You're muted.
Naima, just two quick things, and we'll go into heart rate variability because I think that's one of the things that we did not measure in early devices. We had heart rate, you could tell zones of training and some other things. I think it's super important, and I'll share some insights with you, which is partly relative to the direction it's going, has a lot to do with the autonomic nervous system. But before going there, tell us a little bit about this usage, because community is of all kinds of community. But some of the ways you've used it by having a partner that also wants to use it, and it's also kind of a geek. One of the things that, of course, is beautiful is to not let devices fall into the trap of the disease care system of the US, but also of
Yeah.
the world, Western world, which is like over individualized and over medicalized. So as you know, most people measure their insulin to decide how much they should inject themselves. I mean, they measure their glucose, like most things that people measure, sadly, or they measure the blood pressure just to like see if they need to take medicine. So the first is like a model where there is genuine learning for thriving and longevity. So tell us a little bit of some of the things, and I know maybe it's also some challenges, you know, like I know if you sleep with someone that's your partner and then like you're competing for sleep scores could be funny, but tell us a little bit of the idea of bringing Whoop into a shared kind of vision for health with another human you spend time with.
Yeah, well, first in terms of sharing time, because we usually spend the European summer with my dad in Berlin, and you know, he's a little bit skeptical about these things. He's like, now you guys are just like crazy and addicted to technology and not, you know, like kind of thinks we take it over the top, which I don't think we do, but I understand. And I think that's the importance of the balance that you were saying at the beginning, right? Not depending on this. So I think we've been like figuring it out as we go. Because I think we were like really strict at the beginning and da-da. But in terms of like a shared living, I mean, yeah, both in partnership, I think it definitely helps to have like a buddy system. And I see potential of this in terms of communities that foster well-being because, you know, it can be tricky to create habits that are not our, you know, what we're used to, you know, going to bed earlier, eating healthier, da da da. But in a community where those are the default behaviors, you can be helping shape people's behavior in a much quicker and easier way. And I think there's a lot of, I'm very excited to measure through things like Whoop, like, okay, compared to an average individual living in a city life on their own, their sleep, you know, their health scores. And then let's say you live, whatever, try out a pop-up well-being co-living for a month and see what are the scores, you know, or long-term community. I think that's going to be very powerful data to make a case for yeah, living in community or at least being part of community that are encouraging healthy habits. But we need the data, and so I think that's where these things will be very helpful.
Yes, and I want to highlight two things that we spoke about community last week that I know you are very much a champion of, which is where there is high trust and people can be vulnerable, you can learn a lot more. Because then, you know, there's certain settings, and gyms sometimes have this tricky setting where it's like you compare yourself to other people. Like, how do they look? How much they weigh? Like, what are they dressing? What car they came in? And then it's much harder to learn where the ego is kind of on guard.
Yeah.
And I think you often create spaces where it's very easy to be like in the circles, open and vulnerable. And then data can be very helpful because you're never trying to just say like, oh, here is my score. What's your score? You really have curiosity. So let me go into one of the things you mentioned, and then I'll pass it a little bit around the group because one of the things that it is one of the key measures of
Wait, can I just
health.
interrupt you before you go
Yeah,
on? Just
you
follow
always
up
can.
on that
Always can.
point is that, yeah, in difference to like the competitive mindset, I think the kind of communities that I've been co-creating with others, there's a very clear shared intention from the beginning about fostering well-being on 3 levels: individual, collective, and planetary well-being. So when there's that shared intention of people coming together and we know all the behaviors that we're going to be doing, all the practices, all the conversations, all the food, all the time in nature, all the songs, all the music, it's all in some way curated or somebody suggesting it because they know this is promoting well-being. Suddenly it like, if there's already trust, it just like amplifies the trust, and any kind of sense of competitiveness just disappears because you're like, oh no, it's all, we're all supporting each other's well-being. And once you're in that kind of consciousness, you realize my well-being supports your well-being and supports the planetary well-being because I am nature and da-da-da. So those are the kind of spaces that I'm cultivating and excited to explore further with this community. Yeah, thank you.
No, not only thank you because I think that is the best setting to do. Like, we are obviously part of nature. Like, the sense of being separate people competing is of course an illusion of being, but the illusion is very persistent. And I think I like that the first step is to make very explicit that any thriving and well-being can only happen at those 3 levels. I spent some time, and I'll go into HRV in a moment, but just with some business leaders like 15 years ago in Venezuela, part of the Aspen Institute, and they were some of the top billionaires at that time of Latin America. And they were explaining how they just let these populist government come in, and they thought Venezuela is so rich in oil and nature and whatever, so like just whatever they could focus on their own life, their own private houses, own private jets, and just let the collective. Of course, the country imploded, and one person said it, reminding our coach that there is no healthy person or successful business in a failed society, the way there can obviously be no healthy community in a, let's say, dead planet. But now to say in positive, imagine what there is, as you know, Naima, a phrase that I love sharing, and I know you and your mom tune into, which is at the speed of love and trust. If there is a space that already has love for your own body and self as an expression of nature. So you're not just trying to look healthy for some reason. You love that you're alive and accept that as another gift. And then you love the community where everyone wants to learn, thrive, and connect to well-being. And you love that you're this planet whose health and our health are obviously interdependent with all interbeings. Then these technologies, rather than confuse us, can in an instant let us learn in a way that the wisdom of our grandparents can also be the personalized data shared in community for a new earth. And I think one of the things that we should have better data soon, and I know you've been doing this measurement, Naima, is like there are people who achieve health feeling they need a lot of extra resources, like a big house with a swimming pool, with a gym, with like more and more resources, because to be healthy you need to inject yourself more, buy more, like, and that sadly has never been the wisdom of almost any long-lived human. Most of them were people who had intergenerational purpose, who walked around naturally, who were not overly stressed by things. So with that, I'm going to go briefly into HRV, and then we'll open it up again, which is heart rate variability. You know, uh, it used to not be measured except with some more advanced machines. So it's between heartbeats. There's not always the same amount of time. That's basically a summary. There's certain milliseconds. Now, this gets slightly technical, and some people give a little bit of a more metaphor, but the core is that it is very clear, Naima, and this is maybe something we can start sharing in the group, what things have an impact. So you just shared some of the ones that are the most common for heart rate variability, which is why it's very much a proxy for recovery after sleep. Deep sleep, 7 to 9 hours for most humans, regular sleep schedule, and few waking up cycles allow HRV to kind of stay well. But then how do you improve it? The most important way is aerobic exercise. And here there is a nuance we'll discuss later more, which is people used to think it was very important to do high intensity work, and it is useful to do for a bit. But a key part of the metabolic health of the mitochondria happens by being able to do longer term exercise at what's called zone 2. The zone 2 is like, say, 70% of your maximum, and your maximum is like kind of a little bit of a subtraction between 220 and your year. So for someone who's getting close to 50, it's like 120 beats, heartbeats per minute. That's not a very intense work. At 120 beats per minute, you can even walk and speak. Like, you need to catch the breath, but you're Peter Attia and Outleaf and many others who have realized that that is very important. Why? Because at very high heart rate, there's also high stress. And heart rate variability can also be affected by overtraining. But at about 120 for a 50-year-old, you can go almost indefinite. You can train half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, because you're using not the glycogen in the muscle, but you're using the fat that even very lean people like you have thousands of calories. So what is very important for heart rate variability and zone 2 is that you let the mitochondria produce energy efficiently by using fat as fuel. A lot of people have messed up that pattern by eating a lot of processed food and mostly sugars, refined sugars of all kinds. So that's a very big one. The second is strength training has an effect because metabolic health has a very close connection to that. But the three other things that there's a lot of data that improve heart rate variability are mind-body practices like Qigong, partly because the autonomic nervous system sees obvious benefits, and some kinds of yoga, especially like yin yoga. The other is there's a lot of correlation between breathwork, kind of like the Wim Hof, where you do some hypoxia hormesis, because it also has a reset. And then there seems to be good correlation, and I've seen it on ice baths, especially when combined with breathwork. But I think this is something that so many things of a lifestyle can operate. I would imagine someone that dances joyfully while smiling probably will also improve in that. And a little bit on that note, I want to pass it briefly to Pikara. I don't know how much she works right now with any traditional measurements or not. I know that in traditional Chinese medicine, one of the very beautiful things is that you also have a more nuanced way of measuring the body's own meridians, different pulses. But also she has probably a tuning a little bit to some of these things that help people these days have a better self-assessment of how their mind-body practices help them in things like heart variability. Pikara, are you able to unmute and share a little bit of something you've seen in this new pattern, whether you've experienced it or not, or that it's interesting to you, as I'm assuming that more of your clients will start using them?
Yes. So I have been debating which one to buy. I've been researching them for a few years, to be honest, and collecting data from other people that are using them. So my patients have been using them, like the Aura and the Whoop. A couple things, especially for people living in cities and very high stress environments, it's really helped some of my patients to have more awareness, because they're so busy with other things that they weren't really paying attention. And that it has really helped them. So they know now that when they go to bed at a wildly different hour, they stay up too late, that their body's affected. They know that if they're stressed out at work, their body is affected more. So I think that for a general population of city dwellers that have been using it, they use it a lot for sleep and stress, to understand better the impact, and understanding recovery, because especially in New York, people push themselves very hard. I see marathon, runners and triathletes, and these people, they're pushing themselves way too hard, and these devices are actually helping them to become more aware, to listen to their body and pay attention. So to your point, Pablo, it's, I always think of it as I listen to my body and my intuition first, and then to have data to back that up just supports my intuition more. But I think there are some people out there who aren't listening at all, and these devices are helping them to start paying attention more to what their body might be telling them. So that's been something I've noticed. I will say my cousin has a Whoop. My brother has a Fitbit. They both decided to not drink for a month, and they work together. And they had a work outing, so they hadn't had a drink in 3.5 weeks. They had a work outing. They both said, we're going to have a drink and see what happens. And they were floored at the impact the 1 or 2 drinks they had of alcohol had on their sleep. And they both kept saying, but the data showed it. Our devices showed us. We knew that we felt terrible the next morning, but the devices knew, and it told us that even though I know I slept 7 hours, that the device said it wasn't good sleep. And it was really great to watch 2 people who, I mean, they, these are people that work in business and, they exercise, but these are not people who are spending a lot of time focusing on their health and wellness. But this is bringing them a lot new awareness. And my brother has said to me numerous times, you told me this was true, but now I can see it with my own data. And so I think as a practitioner, it supports the work that I'm doing with people, because they've got a device that's also giving them the data. I'm telling them, You know, when you're drinking alcohol, you're not going to sleep as well. Even, oh, but I feel like I sleep great. But you're tired the next day, right? Yeah, but I don't think it's the alcohol, it's something else. So to have the data feedback, it reinforces what I'm teaching them, and it's helping them to start really pay attention more. So I think it's been very valuable. I'm planning on getting a Whoop. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I'm excited to use it for myself, because then I think it will also help me in being able to guide my patients a little bit more with their data, as I understand the systems personally. But I'm really glad that they exist, and I think that as long as people they don't use it as another form of orthorexia, they use it in a healthy way as feedback. I think it can be very useful.
Well, great that you've been researching. I know Yati has been researching. I think it's pretty close to a Whoop. Julia has been researching. She's not a big fan of subscriptions, so that's the only thing keeping her. But I gotta say, after lots of research, I mean, the Aura helped me a lot have better awareness of my sleep. So even though I had some kind of awareness, I really got a management for Aura. But I'm excited because I think maybe within this Thrive Beyond community, Andres already has it, and I was with him for a while, and Naima and her partner. So I feel would be nice if a few of us get it in the next couple of weeks or months. We arrive into 2025 and kind of show more beautiful ways to use technology from wisdom, because I think that's very much the spirit. So not putting any pressure. I get no fees from Whoop, though I think I may even find a discount potentially. But anyway, the point is, I'm glad you're thinking about it. Now we'll go for about 10 more minutes. I want to invite.
Can I just ask a
Yes,
follow-up
always
question?
yes, always yes.
Thanks. It really resonated. Sorry, what's your name? Dr. C.
Pakara, yeah.
Picara. Yeah, no, thanks for your share. That really resonated. I mean, the alcohol story is fascinating, and what you said before about like with your clients being more in touch with their body or listening to their body, like that for me was just like, oh wow, I really want to make that message or case more clear. Could you just re-say what you said there, or like expand a bit on that aspect, the being more in touch with your body element?
Yeah, I think I'm dealing with people who are living a very hectic life in New York City, that are working a lot of hours, a lot of type A personalities. They want to run a marathon and they want to work 80 or 90 hours a week, and they want to travel, and they want to do so much. And I think that in that process of pushing themselves, it's not uncommon for me to notice that they actually lose touch with their body. And they're so in their mind about, I want to achieve these things, I want to do these things. They use willpower and they push. But sometimes when you do that, you don't want to feel the pain, you don't want to feel the discomfort, you don't want to feel what your body's going through. And so they lose touch of it in those moments where they're pushing. But then I think even when they, are doing everyday things, they've just lost touch. They can't feel their body. So when I notice when they start using an Aura ring or a Whoop, that first their attention is going a little bit more to their body, just because the device is giving them information, and they trust the device's information, and they look at it and go, it says I didn't sleep well last night, and they finally turn and go, really, how do I feel like I'm tired? Do I feel like I didn't sleep well? Where before they're not looking at that. They just wake up and they'll just chug a bunch of coffee and run off to the next thing.
They can ignore their body's symptoms.
Yeah, and New York City is almost designed for push. But I know, Naima, I know you were a gymnast early on in your life, and there's even some sports that do not naturally prioritize recovery. And one thing, Picara, that I completely agree, and it even helped me, is when they did the algorithms and they thought what to put at the center of both the Whoop and Oura Ring, Whoop has at the center of its core every day how you did on recovery. Train, recovery. We have been talking earlier on hermetic stress. And what's sad, exactly you say, is that there is the sense of some people who already work hard and they also want to party hard and travel hard. And when we look at the wisdom of the Blue Zones, most of the centenarians had a natural tuning with nature. So it was kind of logical when to go to sleep, when to have a nice long dinner with family and pause, when it was time to go and work and lift things and walk around. So nature has kind of an organic sense of when to move, when to pause. Cities, especially like New York, have a sense you don't need to ever pause. There's always something going on and you're going to miss out on the next event or business or social thing or marathon. And the fact that they put recovery at the center was because when they looked at even things like steps that were the first thing that trackers used to track, Whoop actually didn't have until very recently a tracker for steps because they thought steps were not scientifically solid enough. Sleep definitely was very important and the different sleep cycles, and exactly as everyone that has ever tracked alcohol and sleep, like the only amount of alcohol that is healthy is 0, and sleep is very important. Now, I want to just highlight these two things from Naima and Picara, which is like, I really think that conversation works best when you open it both ways. If you're lucky to be in a place like where Yati and Julia are, like around Pachamama, close to nature, with the cycles of the day, it's much closer to know when to rest, when to act. If you're in the city, it's much more challenging. But all of health, thriving, and longevity, it's like a conversation. All organisms have cycles and are harmonized periods of stress and periods of recovery, of some intentional strain. Same even with muscle. If you just never pause, you don't let it recover. And I think I'm gonna maybe bring that topic a little bit further in one of our conversations next week, because as we talk about purpose and community, there is a mindset that gets sometimes confused, which is the real beginner's mindset and growth mindset. It's not more always. Is freshness of perspective to each present moment. Because some people could hear growth mindset and be like, yeah, I want to do more and push more. So if you're all day sitting around and never do any hermetic stress, you also have a challenge. But I think one of the elements I would love to intentionally share is one of the things that Picara has said, and I'll also pass it to you briefly, Naima, which is how to do more intentional restoring. Like maybe after the gym, people could come and watch, I don't know, the news. That's not even very relaxing to the autonomic nervous system and to the body. And you're just like, sedentarism is like the new smoking of this generation. But let's say that you did a little bit of Qigong, or like barefoot walking on grass, or some dancing, or connected to your inner expressive energy in music. Like, I think one of the things when we all get whoops that I would love for us to share is better ways in which we allow our bodies to harmonize again after strain. Because there's, I think, a bad concept that it's just passive, and it's I think I'll pass it to everyone here. How, even if we have good measures, heart rate variability, for example, does not improve much when you sit watching TV. But when you do, like, say, Qigong or an ice bath or breath work, actually amazingly that recovers you better, or a nice meditation or some dance. So I wanna go to one quick round here of something I wanna then bring to the group. We'll have both this video and another video to share. Is there something online that you've seen, like Naima shared, that you think would be useful to share, where some of these topics get addressed? And I'll just pass it around. Whoever wants to unmute will share with that, and we'll feed a little bit the next level of conversation before we all get whoops and share some ideas together.
Sorry, Pablo, are you asking websites or sources where we that have information on how to integrate
or people
more? Or,
so that inspire you. So Naima gave two examples, like the scientist from Whoop and Brian Johnson, who spends $2 million doing things. You don't need to have one. I'm just saying, like, it just opened my mind to say this. This is a space where it's interesting to see what people are learning from this, since it's relatively new. Like, there are not many books on this yet.
Yeah, I feel like I've read lots of things online, but I'm not sure that there's any one person I'm following. But I will say that one of my teachers, Thea Elijah, for years, I was her teaching assistant, traveled all over North America with her. She was teaching practices to help people to be in their hearts and to basically calm their nervous system, and to learn how to do that while doing other things. And
Yes.
and so I'm a big fan of this, and I teach this with some of my patients, and I'd love at some point to have a Whoop for myself, or get a couple patients who would commit to telling me, how they're doing if they do these practices. And so what I love about these practices is that you can do them in New York while you're waiting for the subway, while you're in line, while you're doing your dishes, it's learning how to bring that conscious awareness of your body and your breathing, and sort of your centeredness, like how to come back to center. So it's like you go to the gym, but afterwards it's like, can you do a few minutes of this type of conscious work, and how does that affect your recovery? Right. And so that's kind of where my mind was when you were talking about it. And she's got a lot of audios and different things that you can learn from. She's also a Sufi healer, but she separates out her Sufi work from her other secular work on that she calls whole heart connection. But I think that's kind of where I'm curious about in the future.
That's
is
beautiful.
Yeah, where people's, like, what the data will show when people can start coming back to center faster, and what does that look like in the data? That's sort of something I'm interested in.
Okay. Also, I am, and I have a Whoop, so maybe this week we'll share some of these possibilities, and then maybe some of us who already have it, maybe Naima and I can start practicing, and maybe Juan, and we'll already let you know on that. Beautiful. Yati, Julia, do you want to just share something before we close for today? Okay.
No,
Julia?
no, I don't have anything to say except I really don't like subscription. It just feels like I cannot imagine what can Whoop do for me to feel that much better. That I already work out, I kind of get the idea how I sleep, what affects my sleep and everything. I would do want to buy Oura Ring or maybe Ultra Human, but Whoop or Fitbit, I'm like, how much better is it? Like, how much of a difference will it actually make that I have to pay $30 every month? Like, how much better is it than Fitbit?
Yeah.
I would love to hear
Well,
if someone can please
good.
help me.
I'll tell you what I think is one answer, but I'm not trying to convince you. It is obvious that's a better business model to have subscriptions than to sell devices one by one. But Whoop, I think, took it to a very good range. One is because you have communities of people that you can learn together, because it keeps adjusting the algorithm. Then you no longer even need to worry, even if the hardware changes. So when you buy a Whoop, let's say that in a year they design a new device, they just send that to you without having to pay, as long as you're still paying the membership. So what they shifted is the idea of being a device and really being a service with community. Now, I think you can stay skeptical, because I think the beauty of this community is that no one has the truth. But we'll share in the near future some of the things that can be done.
Yeah.
Naima, do you want to close with any last comment for this tuning in today?
No, I think it's been great. Thanks everybody for sharing and keeping this alive.
Great. And what I'll do, Naima, is I'll do a prompt tomorrow to share some videos like the ones, or people's names that, like we've said, we already heard some nice things on people's books. And since you do have the aura, the whoop, I think it would be nice for some of us who have it, and I think Andres at the gym would be up for it, that we could try a simple first challenge like the one Picara said. Like, we learn some simple heart sensing meditations, and we then start to see how our recovery and our sleep evolves. And this is a simple test and totally doesn't take more time. In fact, it's doing it
I
shorter.
love it. And I also have like another, I think, friend or two friends who have the whoop, so we could even like explore with them. Well, Isabella, who you know.
Yes.
Actually, one more. I did want to say one more thing, because tomorrow I'm gonna do an Instagram live of my morning routine. So I'm gonna be guiding a meditation. I'm gonna do some stretching and a little workout. If anybody wants to join for that.
What time is it?
7 a.m. Costa Rica time.
Okay, good. I will join, because I normally meditate with Rodo, but I do that most days, so I will do it tomorrow.
I might join. I will try. Naima, maybe you can just like send like a short invite in the group in case someone wants to join.
In the WhatsApp group? Oh yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, and maybe I will try to join if I wake. I'm not super early bird.
But you know, Naima, I hadn't thought of this, and I'm glad you're doing it. I think this is a very nice thing to do, and to do live, like some of the things, like you've already perfected our morning routine with some key things. So yeah, count me in, share it in the group, and I'll also see you on Thursday. I think I managed to move my thing from Thursday to Wednesday. So
yay!
So we got a good week.
We're gonna shake our booties in a very conscious way.
Absolutely. All right.
Alrighty.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day. Good night.